probably as a founder, and you're probably a bit blue sky, a bit kind of visionary, I suppose, without being too grandiose. Some of the nuances that you don't expect to get really caught up is the legal side of things. I'm Jamie Mitchell. I'm the co-founder of Low6 and the CEO of our USA division.
Perfect. So tell us a bit about Low6. What do you do?
Yeah, Low6 is a new peer-to-peer gamification platform that's been brought to market in the last 18 months. Effectively, we help rights holders white label our platform so they can monetize their rights in and around sports and venues, really.
Perfect. And obviously, you've had quite a growth story from launch to the point you are today, where you're looking to IPO later this year. So tell us a bit about the early days. What did it look like? Why did you start this business?
Yeah, sure. So I'm the founder of a sports marketing company called Priority Sports Marketing. Priority Sports Marketing was making applications for rights holders. So mobile apps for race courses and football clubs. And it was really, Low6 was born out of that business. Really, we were obviously selling this sort of shiny object to the race course or the football club, and 3 or 4 months later, the invoices are going into those football clubs and race courses, and they're thinking, right, is this app worth its money? Yes, it delivers news. Yes, it delivers content and live scores, but actually, do we value this application? And that got us to thinking, well, how do we monetize these applications for rights holders? And the one thing that we noticed that wasn't out there was an influencer-led platform where the call to action is from the rights holder, i.e. a football club, to say to its fans, why don't you come and, I don't know, bet, let's use that word loosely, on the outcome of today's game. And we looked at that, and there were several reasons for it. And one of them is the connotation of gambling. No football club as a rights holder is going to want to encourage somebody to come and place a bet on their platform. And the second one was technology. And we thought we could overcome both of those spaces. So we created Low6 as a safer, more responsible alternative to a sports book. So it's peer-to-peer betting, you against your mates. Typically, you don't want to see your mate lose 500 quid to you. You're happy to take a tenner off him, but you might not want to. Certainly, my mates might want to take £500 off me. But certainly, the idea is peer-to-peer. That it's low stakes, it's a lot of fun, and then that way the football club, horse racing track, etc., can get behind it and make that call to action out to its audience. The second challenge from that then was scale and how do we build a platform that can do that? So multi-tenanted, get licensed by the Gambling Commission, do all of this in a safe manner. So we actually then went out about our business of building a platform that's multi-tenanted, that's scalable, and getting all the regulatory requirements from the Gambling Commission to make us a fully licensed operation. So once we'd managed to tick all of those boxes, and that's a really time-consuming process, we then set about introducing our game into the platforms as we do now as a free-to-play iteration. So you can go onto various rights holders applications and play our games free-to-play whilst we build an audience. And absolutely, at some point, we will then look to monetize the platforms for the rights holders.
And you mentioned that you're trying to get into a few of the race courses and the football clubs. And today, when we look at your site, we can see that you're partnering with UFC, a whole host of football clubs, British Superbikes, and so on. So what was it like trying to get those first partnerships in place? How difficult was that? And what were the real wins for you at that point?
Yeah, I mean, credibility really was what we'd got on our side. So having a really successful sports marketing company that worked with a lot of rights holders was absolutely pivotal. But if I go back to the sports marketing company, we're a really sort of rags to riches type story of a bedroom setup. And the way we first approached getting to speak to those right holders was going on to ceoemail.com, I think it was, and we would buy a list of CEO emails, because we figured out if you email the marketing manager, there's no way that he will respond to you. But if you email a CEO, he's almost duty bound to pass that person. And again, that call to actions now come from the CEO to the marketing manager to say, listen, these guys have reached out to me. I want you to at least respond to them with a courteous response. And we backed ourselves that once we'd spoken to the right person in any organization, that we could convert that to a meeting. And once we'd got a face-to-face pre-COVID, we were pretty confident in our ability then to close that into a partner. So yeah, it was really hard yards, going from the equivalent of a yellow pages effectively to build those rights holders up. And once we'd built them, we had a brilliant proposition, and we knew that actually we would do an incredible job across the UK. And so we went from 0 rights holders to 25 within the first 6 months of inception. So, we really were quite aggressive and scaling quite fast. But, it was all about hard yards in the first instance, for sure.
And that early, I suppose, quick success must have made it much easier than speaking to investors to really back the company.
Yeah, absolutely. We sort of did again the hard yards for almost 3 years whilst we proved concept, built at scale, etc. Then we managed to secure our first seed funding, and our sort of first seed funding was about £900,000, which then allowed us to go and really start to accelerate the build of the platform. We always knew that once we had got our product live, we would be able to access more traditional VC type money rather than angel money. And yeah, that absolutely was the case. Once we'd put the product live into some of our existing rights holder applications, we probably sat 7 or 8 meetings with VCs in London before we were successful in meeting our sort of first I would sort of say Series A type funding, which came in the form of about a £3 million pre-Series A.
And talk to me about the rapid growth of the business then. So you're only sort of 3 or 4 years old, looking to IPO this year. What has changed in the business, particularly your role? How has your role changed in the business, and what's changed around you during that growth?
Yeah, I think probably scaling the people. We're on a mission to hire some of the best talent that we can in the UK. We've attracted talent from the likes of Gymshark and other big, culturally very sound businesses that have moved to our business to help us scale. We brought in a really great operator to run the business in our our chief operating officer, Jake Johnson, who we managed to prize over from a highly regulated career in Lloyds Bank. And Jake brings with him an element of, I suppose, day-to-day stability and bringing that strategic vision of the CEO to life. So, people, I would very much say, has been at the forefront of what we're looking to do. And with any business, being funded has really helped. We've been very aggressive in the amount of partners and partnerships we've formed. So, our marquee partner is the UFC. That's not without its own expense. The UFC don't accept any kind of substandard, so the quality that we produced has had to increase exponentially. And we looked for people with, our chief marketing officer, Josh Turk, we hired from Blitzbet, who is Dan Blitzarian's company over in Canada and the States. And we went out and got the absolute best people that we possibly could to bring into our C-suite of people, and that really is what I would credit the success of Low6 to, is the brilliant people that now lead the company and lead it far better than I ever could.
And I think expertise across the board is so important when you're growing at that rate. So talk to me a bit as well about how you stay on top of things like compliance. So I know legal is obviously something that is completely changing at every step of the business. So what were the real challenges as you were scaling the business from a legal point of view?
Well, yeah, probably as a founder, and you're probably a bit blue sky, a bit kind of visionary, I suppose, without being too grandiose. Some of the nuances that you don't expect to get really caught up is the legal side of things. So, from raising funds, convertible loan notes to capital, all of which require really good, solid legal advice. The most friendly of angel can become angsty about dilution, etc., and require good legal advice. And then as you start to really, build at pace, at scale, there will be an issue every day, a cease and desist from this person, or an employee tribunal from that person. It becomes inevitable with the amount and the rapid nature of growth. So we've relied heavily on our legal counsels, and then as we moved into the IPO space, I think we now have 3 or 4 sets of lawyers engaged with us for various different compliance regulation areas. So it's very, it's very important to us, and especially being in the gambling sector, we had to bring in our own compliance team in house as well to stop us even getting to the need to get to the legal. So it's an absolute must for us, and something we've invested heavily in to make sure we get it right.
Yeah, and is that covering all aspects of it then? Because you touched on the employee side of it, you touched on the investor side of it. Now you're gearing up for IPO. That's almost a whole new side of things. So is it a case of it's one team that looks after the whole thing, or is it very much a department?
Yeah, we've gone department by department in the end, because for things like trademarking, it's a really specialist topic, which has to go to specialist teams. Gambling commission, specific licensing, etc., a different team. So we still work with some great legal teams, but we have found the benefit of going specifically to different sectors within the legal profession for different advice. So typically we will have, as I say, between 2 and 4 legal firms that we're engaged with at any time.
Makes sense. And over the last, I suppose, 6 months to a year, maybe more, you've obviously had this IPO in mind. So what was the real shift mentally in terms of the way you work, the way you shape the business to make sure you're gearing up in the right way for this?
Yeah, I mean, as soon as you get venture money into the business, then the options aren't shoot for the stars. The options are you're going for the moon, and the IPO for us absolutely facilitates that growth and the scalability that we want to put into the marketplace. I mean, ultimately, what we're looking to do is a seismic shift from sports betting traditionally, where people get into trouble and it can cause horrific problems, into gamification, which is far softer and far more friendly to the end user. So for us, we think there's a huge opportunity because no rights holder has done this before. We're not scaling in the UK. We've signed a huge contract in the US to work with all of the franchises out there. We're in negotiations with South America at the moment. So it literally takes, from a founder perspective, your blinkers off to say, if we're successful with our IPO, we will absolutely be in all corners of the globe within the next 3 years. And our market cap, which is what we're obsessed with at the moment, is how do we build our share value for our shareholders. Our share and sort of value cap will be absolutely exponentially better because of our IPO and the ability to be funded as we're pre-revenue, post-revenue.
Yeah, and with that aspiration of being completely global, you picked the US as the first sort of starting point with that pre-IPO. What were some of the challenges there, and anything you wish you did differently when expanding to the States?
Yeah, I think we're really early on that journey at the moment. Coming back to legals, getting great advice on the green card situation was very good. We ended up getting an extraordinary visa in the end, which allows us to stay in the States for 3 years with unlimited applications to continue working there. And even that, not going the traditional route, was great legal advice that we took. I think we're so early on that USA expansion, I wouldn't know what we would do differently. COVID not coming would have been fairly helpful because we'd already be out there and scaled. I suppose it will be interesting now to see where the landscape takes us post-COVID, and the actual need for us to physically be in the States any longer other than the time zone will be very interesting, because previously if you wanted to go and sit down with a franchise in the NBA, it very much would be, let's go out, watch a game, have the meeting. Now, I think everybody is so accustomed to Zoom and Teams that potentially, will people want to give up 3 hours to take that meeting, or should we just be focusing on having a Teams call for 30 minutes? It will be interesting to see how that landscape changes, I think.
Yeah, and I assume very different when looking to work in the States as it will be to work in, say, South America. Geographically fairly close, but a completely different world. So business-wise, how do you see that varying?
Yeah, I think we're approaching it in the same kind of way, really, in terms of we are absolutely obsessed with regulation and making sure we stick to everything that we're regulated to work within in those confounds. So I think highly regulated small businesses based both in the States and in South America, as the landscapes change for their own gambling laws is important to us. So I think, you know, we're having to be really, really quite strict and agile. But that wouldn't change really for us. So across both territories. So I think we'll approach the two very similarly, you know, for us.
Great. So incredible growth story. Obviously one for us to keep a good eye on over the next few months. Where can people go to find out more about both yourself and Low6?
Yeah, I mean, fire on to low6.com. Keep watching our journey. As I say, we're a white label platform, so you won't hear our name particularly, but some of the biggest brands, when you see Pick'ems contests arriving, like the UFC, the PDC darts, maybe even your own football team, that'll be Low6 that powers those technologies. So keep your age out for us. We are here to start a social movement in terms of changing the way people enjoy sports and betting on sports. And certainly for myself, just go and check me out on LinkedIn, which is Jamie Mitchell from Low6.
Jamie's talked about using 4 firms, but ultimately what you're looking for is one trusted advisor, whether that's a lawyer, an accountant, or someone else who's going to be proactive, challenge your thinking, and who you can rely on and who will always be there when you feel out of your depth. Jamie has just spoken about the complexities of dealing with regulatory issues on his journey. On your journey, whatever the issues are that arise, they're going to be complicated. Whatever you do, don't ignore these. They won't go away. The costs of the consequences of sorting out these sorts of problems will always be more than dealing with them up front. International expansion is really exciting for any business, whether it's in the US or anywhere else. You should be talking to us, a firm with good, strong international connections. And Jamie, that includes you too. It is ultimately all about what you don't know. You need to make sure that you've got a strong understanding of the culture and a firm that has good connections. It is not just about the legals. I love working with founders and entrepreneurs, and like Jamie, so much of what he said will resonate with you. Just like you, I've got energy, ambition, and enterprise in terms of my job and my role, and I'd love to employ some of that with you in terms of helping you with your journey.